Good evening, everybody. I know we've had a couple people join. We'll hang on tight for a few more minutes for more folks to join, and then we'll get started this evening. This session is being recorded and will be shared with members and potentially on social media once we're finished here today. But we're at the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. So just briefly, the purpose of tonight's call is to restart our town hall meetings to inform our memberships and connect our strategic partners with members. I'm your facilitator this evening, Dr. Bonnie Bragdon. I'm the acting president, and we have as our guest speaker this evening, Dr. Renee Schmid, and I will introduce her very shortly. Let's see. And so just as a reminder of who we are in case you're a member who's joined just recently or a strategic partner. And again, this meeting is open actually to members as well as non-members and partners. So we have quite a few different types of people on, or it's an open meeting, just as a reminder. We incorporated about 2018. A year later, we started accepting members. At this point, we have probably greater than 500 members. Most of our members are independent. Well, they are all independent, but most of those are hospital owners. And our goal with IVPA is to promote the value of practice ownership to veterinarians, as well as educate pet owners and animal owners about the value of going to a practice that is independently owned. And we really hope to offer benefits that help keep ownership sustainable and keep it as a viable option for veterinarians to continue to own their profession and their practice. Sorry, my computer's not. There we go. On our agenda this evening, we're going to talk to Dr. Renee Schmid with Pet Poison Helpline. She's our guest independent business. We're going to just touch real briefly on some latest corporate consolidation news. I always think it's valuable to keep an ear or an eye out as to what's happening in the profession, and then open it up to conversation if we have time, and then talk about all the yummy things that are happening at IVPA, and then end it with how we hope you are inspired, and then you can come back and maybe volunteer and be a part of the change. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker this evening, and that's Dr. Renee Schmid. She's a senior veterinary toxicologist with the Pet Poison Helpline. And real quickly, just a quick note, I did a little extra animations because I am very, very excited to introduce her as a representative of an independent business. So I think it's very important as independent practices and owners of independent clinics that we kind of have an understanding of all the service providers and how they are owned and what their business structure is. And so I was extra excited to share with you that the Poison Pet Helpline is actually an independently owned business, just as many of our members are independents. And so with that, Dr. Schmid, I will I'll turn it over to you, and you just let me know when you'd like to have me change slides.
Great. Thank you so much, Bonnie. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the opportunity to talk with your group. I was in private practice for about 13 years before joining Pet Poison Helpline, and they were all independently owned practices. And so I certainly know the value of an independent ownership in practices. And I'm just really grateful for coming here. And thank you for pointing out that we're also an independent business. And a little bit of a background history about Pet Poison Helpline. We have our parent company, which is not really we all work under the same roof or under the same umbrella. We have the same staff, but our parent company is called SafetyCall International. And it was founded by five pharmacists and one veterinarian who is also a pharmacist. And they had been in adverse event reporting regulatory work for 20, 30 years before opening up or starting SafetyCall International. And they were actually the founders of the Minnesota Poison Control Center. And so when they branched out and opened up or started SafetyCall International, at the same time, they started a separate arm, Pet Poison Helpline. Again, the employees are all very intertwined and interconnected, but the things we do are a little bit different. SafetyCall International does, as I mentioned, regulatory work. So we represent hundreds, I think thousands of clients at this point on the human and the animal side for any adverse events. So if there was say an animal got into an overdose of a certain medication or had a vaccine reaction or anything like that, that might be a company that we represent. And so they may call that 800 number on the back. That might be one of our staff that answers that call. And then we do on human and animal side, we do a significant amount of consulting work for different companies as far as FDA and EPA requirements and regulatory reporting. And we do a lot of just consultations. We'll have companies that will come to us and say, we are looking at starting this, wanting to market this new product. Will you please do a kind of a safety analysis of it to see, would it be, maybe it's a carpet cleaner, would it be safe in a household with pets? And so that's something that we do kind of on our, what we consider the industry side of our business. And then with Pet Poison Helpline, we're strictly animal poisoning, and we're staffed with veterinary technicians and veterinarians. Many of our veterinarians are boarded in toxicology or veterinary toxicology or both. We also have veterinarians who are boarded in other areas of veterinary medicine. Our technical staff, the majority of our technical staff are registered or credentialed veterinary technicians. We do have a well-experienced veterinary technical support staff that maybe aren't credentialed. Maybe they've had many years in practice as an assistant, and so they can help with that as well. And when I asked Bonnie to if I could speak with your group, it was really just to help bring some knowledge of animal poison control centers in general, Pet Poison Helpline. It's to know that we're a resource for you guys and in the practice, and that are there. When I was in private practice, the first practice I worked at, we utilized animal poison control centers frequently. And then as time moved me in different places, there were other areas that didn't utilize them at all. And so I thought this would just be a great opportunity to help raise a little bit of awareness. And so if you aren't familiar with animal poison control centers, there are 2 in the country. 2 in the United States, and I don't believe there are any in Canada. So we take a lot of calls throughout North America, United States and Canada, but primarily. However, we will take calls all around the world. And we do get calls from people who usually are American citizens, and maybe they're working in another country for temporarily, or visiting another country, or maybe they're deployed in the military someplace else. But anyways, what is an animal poison control center? We're a center that provides 24/7 assistance to pet owners and veterinary professionals alike. So we never close, we're always open. And we try to offer that continuity between days, nights, evening, weekends, overnights, holidays. And we really make that initial risk assessment and treatment recommendations for animal exposures to potential toxins. And our purpose is truly to be that trusted resource in veterinary toxicology. And as technology continues to move through veterinary medicine, as telehealth continues to move through, AI continues to change, and apps begin to kind of become more and more common, it's something that we really strive to be that trusted resource of specialists in toxicology. That's our job. That's what we do. And we can help that particular exposure from initial all the way till hopefully they get back home with their owners. Again, we make that initial exposure assessment to determine if what it is they got into is going to be problematic or not. We determine if that's going to be a concern and what treatment recommendations are needed. Next slide, Bonnie, please.
Sorry, I was muted.
You're okay.
Yeah. So Renee, just help us understand, so a pet owner may be the first one to initiate contact with you. And then how does that work if the pet owner is the first one to initiate contact?
Yeah, you bet. I think it's on my next slide.
Next slide.
Or the
Okay.
one right after that. And if it's not on there, we'll certainly circle back to that.
I am having a problem with technology. There we go.
Okay. It should be on the one after this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to jump back one, and I'll just go through that one, and then we'll hit this one, just so people know kind of how we operate. A lot of times we'll get calls from pet owners and even veterinarians and veterinary staff who will say, gosh, who are you? What training do you have? Where did you come from? Type of a thing. And as I mentioned earlier, our main office, our owners, our founders are on the human side and veterinarian. So we currently have several veterinarians who are partners and pharmacists who are partners in our business. And we're staffed for Pet Poison Helpline specifically. We're staffed, as I mentioned, with credentialed and non-credentialed veterinary technical staff, veterinarians. Some of us are boarded in toxicology and veterinary toxicology, and then other fields of veterinary medicine. But something to remember is that we are a call center. So all our consultations, our interactions are done over the phone, and we utilize a very extensive database. So we are about to celebrate our 20th year in business in January. We'll kick that off. And so we're able to take all of that information that we've compiled over the last 20 years, and we can look to see with ibuprofen, what was the most common toxic dose where we saw clinical signs? Has anything changed? What signs did we see? What treatment recommendations were given, and which ones worked? And what were some other issues that developed? And ibuprofen is probably a bad example because it's been around for so long that that's well established, but we're able to do that with all of the different information and calls that we've received. We also utilize a lot of veterinary scientific resources. So veterinary textbooks and toxicology. We'll utilize any research journals, any papers and publications, peer-reviewed journals. A lot of our staff are authors of those textbook chapters. They're authors of those papers. So we really work hard to stay abreast of all of the newest information that's out there. And then we also utilize an International Poison Control Center database. And so this is actually kind of where our SafetyCall International arm helps us out a little bit, because we have access to human pharmacists, human toxicologists, as well as human poison control center databases. And so this one is used all around the country and all around the world, actually. And we can find information that maybe it's a new FDA approved drug and there's extremely limited information in animals, or maybe it's something that's a new dietary supplement or a new chemical that's out on the market and there just isn't a lot of information for animals yet. We can go to that database, we can find information about that particular product, and we can extrapolate as necessary for our patients. Okay, Bonnie, now the good slide.
I do want to comment too that I really did like your website because it has all these cases scrolling on the bottom, which are fascinating.
Yeah. And that gets updated. It doesn't get updated daily, I don't think. I think it gets updated 2 or 3 times a week, but it is, it's really neat to see
why
all of the different things. Yeah, for sure. So a lot of questions come in as to a lot of apprehension to using an animal poison control center for pet owners or for veterinarians is what really happens. What's the, what am I getting out of this? And that initial call, if a pet owner were to call in, so that initial call gets taken by our technical staff, and we obtain that history at that point in time. So we get the animal's information, we get their signalments, we get their, their weight, their breed, their age, any medical conditions that they may have, any medications that they may be on. And then we find out, hopefully, what that product is that they got into. Sometimes that's an easier question than it is to be answered, because maybe the pet chewed the bottle and they can't read the label, or the owner threw the packaging away, or we've all, in practice, we've all heard things where the dog ingested a green block of bait, and that's the best information they can give us. So we really try to get as much of that information as we can so that we can make that assessment based on that patient. And that's where I think animal poison control centers really stand apart from algorithms and chat GPT, the things like that, where you kind of plug and chug, where we're able to really throw all of that in together to make that assessment for that particular patient, not just that particular toxin. And so then the assessment is made and treatment recommendations then are determined. If it's something that can be treated at home without the need of going into a clinic, we'll talk with them about that. As we all know, there's not a lot we can do at home for these animals that get into a toxic dose of a certain product. And so we do talk with them about referrals to veterinary clinics. We do not make special recommendations for veterinary clinics. So if the caller does not have a current veterinarian and they're not able to Google their closest veterinarian, we'll just pull up Google Maps and try to help them find one that's nearby. But we don't make any specific recommendations as to, oh, utilize this type of clinic or this clinic or that clinic. So we really try to be very open to everyone who's calling us. All right, Bonnie. So for you as the veterinary professional for your clinics, if your clinics were to call in, that initial call is taken then by one of our licensed veterinarians. And we're either going to obtain that history if it's a new case. I will say that probably the majority of veterinary clinics that utilize our services have the pet owners call us first. It's the same fee regardless of who calls us. And a lot of times it's just kind of nice to get that initial information and everything out of the way so it's more efficient for your staff. If the clinic calls first on behalf of that patient and that owner, then we'll get that full history. If not, then we will confirm the history that we've already received. We'll remake that assessment because a lot of times the weight changes, the history changes between either them calling us and getting into your exam room, or maybe they had a chance to find more of the medication that was missing. And then we'll talk about the treatment needs that are necessary. And what's included with our consultation is the follow-up for as many times as you guys need at that veterinary clinic, as you as the veterinarian and your technical staff, as many questions as you have, as many times as you need follow-up, you can certainly call us back. And so we really don't just stop by saying, yes, this is what it is. This is the cookie cutter, how to treat it. But we really, again, continue that throughout as much as you need. For any of you who have had to manage cholecalciferol cases or vitamin D3 cases that become symptomatic, and they're symptomatic for potentially weeks to months on end. And there have been times where we've had well over 30 consults on one particular case because it has just continued to have issues. And we're happy to be that resource for veterinary clinics. All right, Bonnie, I think there's one more. Yeah, so this is my favorite part of my job is that we are truly desired to be in partnership with clinics. We don't want to do things outside of the clinics. We don't want to try and have, we don't prescribe, we don't diagnose with the pet owner, we don't do anything like that. We want to be in partnership so that our specialists, our specialty field of toxicology and our experts can guide you, the treating veterinarian, and the veterinary technicians in order to treat that individual patient. And I do a lot of training with our staff, and our new staff, I always talk with them about, you have to treat the patient. You don't just treat the toxin. And while the toxin certainly helps to guide where we're going, it's the patient that dictates what it needs. And so that's something that with the help of you guys, the treating veterinarians, we're able to be in that partnership together so that we can maximize the successful care of that particular patient. We do send an email case report so everyone has it for their records. And so we'll make a brief summary over the call. Again, we are a phone consultation service, and so may talk with you much more in depth as far as the specific toxic dose and those types of things. And we'll send a brief summary of that includes our main concerns and what the treatment recommendations are. And then on our website, as Bonnie had pointed out, we also have there's a vets section, and you can get on there and you can find client education material. So you can order clings, you can order brochures, you can find infographics that you can download and utilize for your either social media or your newsletters or your client education. We have a lot of different newsletter content and website information. Anything that you're wanting to do to try and help educate your pet owners, your clients on concerns with toxins. We're really getting into that holiday season where these animals are going to get into a lot more things just because owners aren't really thinking about, they're not having their regular routine and people are visiting and there's a lot of chaos that's going on. And so this is a really busy time for animals to get into things that they wouldn't typically do. And then the last thing that I'd just like to point out is that we do offer free race approved CE. Those are offered on 4 to 5 times a year, so at least once a quarter, and they're usually on a Tuesday around lunchtime, but we do record them as well. And so you can go back into our website and you can pull up our past webinars, and you can still get, for the first 2 years after it's gone live, then you can also still get race approved CE, non-interactive race approved CE for watching the webinar, or race approved CE for watching them. So just something that's a little bit extra. It's always no charge, and something that helps get a little bit of extra CE in there for you.
Always need more CE.
Yeah, always need more CE. And I think that's it for my slides. And I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have any other questions about the process or just anything at all, I'd be happy to answer that.
Yeah, to kick the conversation off, Renee. So I heard you say, you recommend, or it seems to be that most of the time the way clinics interact with your services, the clinic will actually recommend the pet owner call. So what are some best practices and the best way to use your services that just keeps everything flowing and efficient and comfortable for everybody?
Yeah. So I think what typically works best is if that pet owner were to call your clinic and they were to say that they've gotten into XYZ. Okay. And your staff could recommend that they call us, notifying that there is a fee for our services. We do not receive any subsidized funding. We don't receive any government funding. We are a standalone business, so we do have to charge for our services. We do strive to always be the most cost-effective service for veterinary toxicology. And some people will wonder why is there a fee? A lot of times pet owners are going to say, I don't want to call them. That's why I'm calling you. Right. And we can let them know that, when I was in practice, sometimes we saw chocolate, sometimes we saw some rodenticides. We just didn't really see a lot of toxins. And I was in an urban area. We're a high volume area. We had a lot of cases. We just don't see them very often. My husband's is a practice owner in a rural location now is where we're at. And, very rarely, maybe once in a blue moon, do they get something that's a toxin concern. And so I know for me, when I was in practice before I started in this line, I didn't really know how to treat a lot of things. You learn them in school, but if you see it once every 6 or 8 months, you don't really know how to do that. And so that's something that you can kind of explain to owners, is that these are experts. They know, they know how to best guide you in that particular process. And then once the owner calls, we give them a case number to relay back to you guys, the clinics. And then that case number, your clinic can call as often as necessary with that particular case number, and we'll keep the ball rolling.
So, one of the most, I guess, stressful situations in practice for me is when I'd have an animal come in and I have no idea, right? The client has no idea, didn't report any kind of, they didn't see any exposure. So what are some signs that it might be poisoning? When you don't have a report of exposure, what might make you suspicious that it is actually intoxication or poisoning?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not an easy one to answer. I would say that a lot of times there are general signs that we'll see initially. So maybe vomiting, lethargy, anorexia, inappetence, they're just a little bit off, which can be just about anything, right? Not even a toxin related. Some of the things that start to really perk your ears up more would be they were completely normal, and then several hours later, now they're ataxic, or they're extremely obtended, or they're having seizures. Those significant neurologic signs are kind of those bigger ones, or maybe just significant lethargy, which sometimes that's how we see our cardiovascular signs present if they're hypotensive or bradycardic. Excuse me. That's probably the most common things that we see, or an odor. Maybe there's an odor to them.
Okay.
If they got into some type of chemical product.
Okay.
They smell like laundry detergent. They smell like motor oil.
Oh.
Something like that too.
Very, very interesting. Okay. Well, cool. And I had another question, but it escapes me at this point. So
I can follow up on that question then, Bonnie, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So, and then I'll give you time to think. So we've had a case like that where they were not sure what the pet got into, anything like that. And so in those types of cases, is it still okay to ask them to call you, and you guys can kind of work through some of those symptoms and identify if there's any possible toxins before they come to us? Or like, how would you recommend we handle cases like that?
You definitely can. You definitely can have them call us, and we can start to look at some, some potential options. To be honest, it's something where I would kind of I would alert the owner that they probably aren't going to get a lot of information from us as the technical staff to pet owner in those situations. And what you're really wanting them to do is just to get that case established so that you can then call and talk with veterinarian to veterinarian and talk with that more directly. And then we may be able. The other thing that we can do, because it's not uncommon to get the unknown toxin where they were out for 3 hours and they've come back and we have no idea, we can at least help with treatment of the signs. And so that's something too that you can talk with pet owners is like, yeah, we may not know exactly what that is, but what we're going to establish is this case so that I can call and talk with them to see if we can narrow some things down, and also just to help get guidance in the treatment from these signs.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Because like you said, with the cardiovascular signs like hypotension, I don't always really think of that as like a symptom. So I don't always reach for like blood pressure monitoring or things like that. So that's even to identify some diagnostics to help us get more information would be really helpful. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in those cases, the cases where the owners get the most frustrated in those situations is that they are expecting us to say, your pet got into this. And we can rarely say that because there's so many different toxins with similar signs. So I think, again, just giving them that heads up that you're wanting to consult and we're going to help you, even if we don't know specifically what it is. It's going to come down to patient management and managing signs and knowing that, well, if this happened and this is toxin related, this might come next. This might be in addition to, or don't forget to check this or look at that.
Great. That's what we did. So the case that we had, I thought it was THC. The owners really didn't think it was THC, but then it was helpful to have a conversation with a toxicologist who was like, well, there's not a lot else it could be. Like, it was classic, right? Every symptom, right? And so but it was scary to say, okay, we're just going to wait out these neurologic signs, right? Because, you don't want them to get worse. You don't want to send them home on a Saturday and have it get worse when we're not positive that it's THC.
Right.
So,
for sure.
And then one other question is, we also kind of live in a rural area. So a lot of our clients are, they're 30, 45 minutes away sometimes from us. And so are there kind of general categories where we should say, start driving to us and call on your way, the pet poison helpline, so that we're not then an hour behind the exposure by the time they actually get to us?
Yeah. For sure. Which obviously, if they're symptomatic, they need to start driving right away. Xylitol is one where I like to say, let's go ahead and get started driving, knowing they may turn you around and have you go back once they have figured out, how much they got into, anything that potentially might cause a neurologic sign. So any of our like CNS stimulant medications, or even high amounts of chocolate and theobromine or caffeine supplements, they go down the drain so quickly when they're talking about like no dose and those energy building or bodybuilding ones that have high levels of caffeine in them. So those are ones where I would kind of say, let's just get going. If it was a rodenticide, if it was a food other than xylitol, if it was a plant ingestion, those we've got some time. We have some time to determine if it's going to be problematic or not. But things like non-steroidals, while we have that, a toxic dose, the dose makes the poison in those situations. Those are things that we probably want to get them driving, especially if they say, I don't know, he chewed into a bottle. It could be 2, could be 20 type of a thing. And get them on there. And what we will do then is we'll make that assessment to say, yes, keep going to the clinic, or we say, you know what, turn around and go home. We can get you back home. We've even had people that have been sitting in the waiting room of the clinic, and we've said, gosh, this just really isn't going to be an issue. If you're concerned, certainly have the exam, but this isn't going to be a problem, and you could go home.
Awesome.
Wonderful. So what I heard is that you act as a staff extender, certainly expert and helpful at interacting with clients. And the best way to set expectations is, hey, let's have you call, open a case. And that way, as a team, we're going to make sure that we get the best care possible for your pet.
Yeah, you got it. And some people I would mention too, if your clinic has just a answering machine, just a voicemail on your phone, is after hours, you can say, if your pet got into something that they shouldn't have, either, ingested or poured on or whatever, something that they shouldn't have, we do have clinics that will put our phone number, recommend calling Pet Poison Helpline and our phone number. And then that way, and then if it's going to be an issue, call back. If they say you need to be seen, call us back. And that helps to avoid maybe you getting called in the middle of the night unnecessarily. If you're a clinic that does take calls, as my husband's clinic does, and it keeps them, just let's see if it's even going to be a problem first, and then know whether or not you need to go in after hours to address it.
And one last question, can clinics kind of, for lack of a better word, like register with you in advance before they refer cases, like give you a call, open an account, let you know who they are, just leave a cell phone number. That way, if a patient does call or a client does call and the client says, yes, I'm a patient of Dr. Donahue, then you can actually have that better connection without sharing the contact information with the client.
It's a great question, and we haven't had anybody do that. So, it's something that we do have what's called our insider program. And I think this is a little bit different than what you're referring to. We have our insider program where clinics can register their clinic and their information. And we can certainly have that information so that if any clinic staff member calls in to start a case, then what we do is we keep the card on file. So if a clinic calls in to start a case, then they don't have to worry about payment at that time. We just automatically charge the account the next day.
And then you can just pass it through.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily link to allow the initial staff to call it, for a pet owner to call and say, I'm with this clinic. It's a great question. It's something that I'll have to see if maybe we can get that figured out to incorporate, because I could see how that would be really beneficial for sure. Generally, what we do is we just say, here's the number, the case number,
right,
give it back to your veterinarian, and then have them call us. And some clinics will call us when the animal's en route to the clinic so they can get a little bit of information. Others will call us once they get there. Sometimes if you call us when they're en route, we may say, this is what we have, this is what I'm expecting. if anything changes, like the weight is a big one. You know, the owners who say my dog weighs 20 pounds and he weighs 50 or he weighs 8.
Right.
So those are big ones where we say, okay, any changes at all, then let's, you know, or let's see what's his neurologic status is, call us back, you know, again.
Perfect.
And it doesn't matter to us either way. Sometimes it just takes that, it might result in an extra call if you haven't had your eyes on that patient and hands on them yet.
Got it. All right. Any other questions for Dr. Schmid?
I appreciate the dialogue. This
Yeah,
is
no,
great.
I remember the days, I have to admit, I don't want to tell you how old I am, but I remember the days when at times, you know, you would have a client call the human health or poison pet line and lie and say it was a child. So anyway, those were way back when there wasn't very much support for animal health. So thank you for being there, and we appreciate your staff taking the time to be there after hours and help support clinics.
Yeah, you bet. And I'm happy to answer any other questions if any of you
and
come up with something
in the chat.
Jot down my email address. Bonnie has it, and so you can always I'll put you up there to always reach out to Bonnie, and she can certainly forward it along to me. I'd be happy to get back with you.
Perfect. Just real quickly, wanted to kind of talk about the latest happenings in consolidation. So a lot is going on. It can be kind of confusing and overwhelming to understand what's going on in our own profession, which I find kind of freaky. This came out, you know, several years ago. Dr. Ivan Zak with Galaxy Vet gave us some statistics, which I had heard as well. So these kind of are verified, you know, the extent of corporatization around the world. So the estimate here in the United States is that as many as 30% of companion animal practices are owned by corporates, with even more, a higher percentage for specialty practices, being as high as 50% of specialty practices owned by a large consolidator or corporation. You can see here that across the world, that number is even potentially higher. In Sweden, 60 to 65%, and in England, greater than 50%. It's interesting to hear some rumblings that as consolidation and corporatization occurs, there's this energy or fear of missing out, where lots of practices are bought and then maybe not able to manage those. And so we're starting to see some closures in England, some sell-offs of practices that maybe aren't viable or highly profitable. So just really interesting to see all the movement that's going on. Again, a kind of older article here, but just worth a repeat or a revisit. Back in 2019, this showed the number of hospitals that were owned by a variety of these corporate entities, with, at the time, Banfield being one of the largest owners of practices. And now, of course, Mars owns both Banfield and VCA, as well as a couple other practices and businesses. So again, lots of movement that changes over time. So Mars, what's happening with Mars? Always something interesting and new happening with Mars. Had to cut up and piece in here all of the vet and pet care brands owned by Mars. And so now Mars owns Banfield, VCA, Veterinary Specialty Hospital, Blue Pearl, Antec, as well as a couple others. And as you can see here on the right, even my beloved Greenies is now owned by Mars. So I had a sales rep tell me that years ago that Mars makes a whole lot more money on pets and veterinary practice over candy. So the latest is that Mars bought Heska through its ownership of Antec. And so Mars bought the company for $1.3 billion. The Mars family, their wealth has grown. So a few years ago, I used to report the Mars family was worth $94 billion. Now they're up to $160 billion, not too far away from the Walton family. So unlike some of the other practices or larger corporate networks, which are owned by private equity, investment firms, consolidators, those types of groups, Mars actually owns a very large group of practices as a private owner, family owned, similar to Heartland. So NVA, National Veterinary Associates, what's happening there? And with that group, we see that they are owned by a private equity firm with the shortened version acronym of JAB. And JAB now plans to actually spin off NVA into two groups, one being Ethos, a cutting edge care group of practices that deliver cutting edge care, as opposed to NVA, which will continue to deliver access to care, or my interpretation of that is affordable or budget care. And so they're going to sell off, if you will, or get investors to publicly trade in those two groups and kind of split them. So I thought this was a really interesting way to understand what an IPO, or initial public offering, is. Who knew when I went to vet school I was kind of going to have to understand these things? And so a private equity company like JAB then sells shares to the public. So the public now owns and can invest back in that company. So interestingly enough, might be an opportunity for you as you're looking at your 401k and where maybe you should invest funds. It might be a good way to invest in your own profession is with this stock option. However, I actually believe owning your own practice is kind of the best way to invest in your profession. So why would a company, do an IPO? One, they either need to raise money. I'm wondering with this company if maybe insiders need to access funds, right? So once you get a group of practices to a certain value, there's nobody else to buy you, but to open it up to the public to sell shares. So it might be that some of those owners within the company are wanting to actually cash out or make money or get a return on their investment. Other reasons: gain credibility, increase awareness, attract talent. But my suspicion would be is they've gotten big enough now that they need to find another way to make money, so to speak. All right. And so I see Joel has given us an interesting side in the chat. Yes, it's interesting how it just doesn't end. So I don't know if you've been following what's happening with our pharmacy colleagues, oldie but goodie, CVS and Walgreens. Those pharmacists potentially are walking out on the job, which is neither good for the pharmacy profession or for those of us who need to get prescriptions. So if you've been following this, both Walgreens and CVS have been experiencing staff walkouts in protest of poor working conditions. I've shared this in other presentations, but as you can see here, we probably all intuitively knew that of any profession out there, whether it's dentistry, physician, veterinary, or pharmacy, pharmacist seems to be, the most highly consolidated. And if you think about where you're going to get your prescription, it's probably going to be with CVS or Walgreens. Even if you visit a local Target or maybe your local grocery store, oftentimes those pharmacists are actually operated by these larger organizations and no longer operated by the smaller grocery store or Target. So for instance, if memory serves me right, CVS now operates Target's pharmacy. And so this was a great article produced by the New York Times, how chaos at chain pharmacies is putting patients at risk. So I would think that this is really what's spurring pharmacists to walk out on the job. Some really fascinating and extremely disturbing quotes came from that article. I'm a danger to the public working for CVS. One anonymous letter to the state pharmacy board in Texas. I make mistakes. I had 2 misfills in 3 years with the previous staffing, and now I make 10 to 12 per year that were caught. And really what we're hearing from our pharmacy colleagues is that these pharmacists oftentimes are held accountable when it may have been a problem with the system or the process, not enough people to help keep things and have good oversight. The person who's on the hook, so to speak, when it goes to being reviewed by the board is the individual practitioner or the individual license holder. So I'm going to pause for a moment. I hope didn't fill you with too much doom and gloom, but if we are up to the task, we'd love to hear everybody's opinions. And the thought is have we lost control of our profession? with the idea that 50% of companion animal visits occur at corporate practices. The majority of CEOs are non-DVMs, and have we lost control of our profession? So I'd love to open that up to conversation if anybody would like to contribute, and you're welcome to unmute or give us your insight in the chat. So I think we're entering a renaissance. I am hoping, and this is why I'm very passionate about all the work that we're doing at IVPA. And what I think is happening is that the corporates and the consolidators are so busy with all the things they need to do now that they've acquired so many practices. Now they have very, very hard work of showing profitability and actually hunkering down and managing these practices in order to realize their return on investment. And so, for instance, I've heard rumblings about NBA. They've actually laid off a good number of their business development or sales folks. And so now their attention is going to have to turn inward to make sure that these practices are being well run and managed well, kind of catching up on some things they may have been quick to dismiss in the past. Interest rates are higher. So for some folks, some of these businesses that have to rely on the cost of capital and it's becoming more expensive, hopefully they'll be a little distracted by that. And now that we have so many new schools that may be coming on board, I heard anywhere from 10 to 11 new schools, veterinary schools will be out there educating and bringing new healthcare providers into the profession. I think this is a great opportunity to get our messaging right, really get engaged at schools and with students, and hopefully help get more of those veterinarians who come on over and consider employment and purchase of independent practices. So while it may seem like things are really getting hard and difficult, I do think we have an opportunity, and we can really turn the tide. So just a very high overview of all the things that IVPA is doing for you, offering you benefits. And we'll dig into it a little bit more about specifically what we've been doing lately. We have an association 401k retirement plan. So if you're if you're re-examining your costs or all the things you need to do to maintain that 401k, we'd love to have you reach out and talk about that. We've got a number of referral partners who offer discounted fees as a benefit of your membership. And then we also list your practice in Vet Local. You'd be surprised the number of pet owners who reach out. We actually had a pet owner from Lithuania, the country, ask for advice. And so we're here to help be a voice for the independent practitioner, keep you up to date, and hopefully bring you more benefits. I want to speak very specifically about our student programs. So if we have Dr. Donahue on the call, would love to actually have her speak to our student programming. Dr. Donahue started off as an IVPA student rep way back when, and she has been managing our student reps at Michigan State as well as University of Illinois. So Dr. Donahue, I don't know if it's possible for you to come off mute and kind of give us a quick update.
Sure. Sorry, I'm still running around here all over. So, yeah. But yeah, so we currently have student programs at Michigan State and at Illinois, which we're really excited about. And our student liaisons are second and third year veterinary students who are also passionate about independent practice. And they are hoping to share more about our association with their colleagues and with students in their school. So many of the schools, or all of the vet schools, really have chapters of the Veterinary Business Management Association. So there's a lot of really good business education reaching students these days. But I think the students are still being faced with a lot of the corporate practices when they go to job fairs and stuff like that. And so one of the things I really am excited about with having student liaisons at schools is that IVPA can represent independent practices, just like Banfield can represent all of the different practices that they're trying to recruit for when they get in front of students. So I think one of the committees that we have as an association is called Level the Playing Field. And I kind of really take that concept to heart. And I think that this is a big area where our student liaisons can help us level the playing field among other veterinary students as they're looking for things to do over the summer, during their vet school, as they're looking for externships, right? There's a lot of really appealing opportunities to work with corporate practices who give stipends and travel funds and all kinds of stuff. And so we're really trying to match that with our students by seeking sponsorships within our association to help fund students to come to your practices. And then also kind of just getting the word out to look at independent practices for first jobs. I think a lot of students are looking at places that either they sort of grew up in, or they're really getting heavily recruited by corporate practices and high sign-on bonuses and things like that. So we're just trying to keep independent practices relevant and out there, because if it's not right in front of students, I don't know that they're gonna think to seek it out. So
yeah, and I just, as we're kind of coming up on the hour, and I'm gonna talk about a few other programs that we have, but please feel free to chat with Dr. Donahue in the chat function if you have extra questions. We also would love to expand this program. So Dr. Donahue has really been a leader in helping us start the program, and she's created so much content and kind of structure, for lack of a better word, that if we have a veterinarian who wants to kind of go in and lead setting up a program in their school or a school near to them, we'd love to talk to you about that, and all the content and all the structure and kind of how to do it is readily available, because Dr. Donahue spent so much time on that. So please chat her up if it's something you'd be interested in starting a program in your local area. Feel free to let us know, and we'll reach out to you. If you're viewing this later in a recorded situation, then you can reach us through me at bonnie.bragdon.dvm@iveterinarians.org. And if you head to the website, iveterinarians.org, you can see all that information. So next on our list, next up is, I am very proud, we actually had a great time in Kansas City. We had a pre-conference summit, which was very well received. What I really liked about that summit is we actually had a very good mix of industry experts, marketing experts, accounting experts, with our practice owners and our members. And so it was a great one-on-one kind of conversation to talk about what's going on in their practice and how to manage that better. And then following that pre-conference summit, we followed up with exhibiting in the trade show, which I work for industry. I don't practice. And so booth duty is an important part of what I do day in and day out. And it was really rewarding and exciting to be able to represent IVPA on the trade show floor. Had a couple of folks come up and say they were so happy that we were there to represent independent practices and be a balanced voice with all that's happening with corporatization and consolidation. So really fun, really exciting. Again, we have materials. So Pam Stevenson on this call, our executive director, we've got now flooring, and we got the how-tos, and we've got banners and all kinds of stuff for you, that if you decided you'd really like to get the word out in your state trade show or conference or another local conference, we'd love to send you those materials and have you represent. It's really fun way to get to know new colleagues and network and connect and really hear about what's happening in the profession. And so next, again, if you are interested in volunteering, if you've been inspired, and I know everybody is really overworked and has too much on their plate, but if it turns out that you have interest in volunteering, we are starting a new initiative next year with our Ownership Academy. And if you'd love to learn more about that, please reach out to us. We always would love to have somebody do booth duty. We can send you materials, help you understand what that means. Something as simple as sharing on your social media, asking folks to join, helping them understand the next time you're at any kind of meeting or hanging out with a colleague, letting them know that we exist. And finally, we will likely have our board members rotating off the board, and we'll need to replace those folks. So if you'd like to either serve on a committee or serve as an officer on the board, we'd love to have you participate. We are so excited that we're actually old enough now that we're going to have folks start rotating off, and we'll need replacements. So we'd love to have you consider any and all of those ways to volunteer and really help us grow and get the word out about what we do and who we are. So information here, you can even call my cell phone. Actually, texting my cell phone is probably the best way. I get so much spam. I tend not to answer my phone, but I do answer text messages. And this is actually an outdated email address. It's Bonnie, BONNIE .Bragdon, BRAGDON .DVM at iveterinarians.org. You can find us on our website, and you can also find us on LinkedIn.
Oh, good. Thank you for leading this. This was wonderful.
Yeah, and so we hope to see you again. We're going to, make this a tradition, and we have a schedule where we're hoping to have this event, just an open conversation every other month as we get more people and people get used to kind of participating in this venue. We'll really open it up to conversation and discussion. So look forward to seeing you again, and feel free to reach out to us, ask questions, participate, volunteer, criticisms, what's working, what's not working. We look forward to hearing from you. All right. Good night, everybody.